Today we're talking about coevolution and intraspecific relationships among organisms and among species. Tropical rainforest is particularly prone to this particular phenomenon. When one looks at the tropical rainforest, the first thing that obviously you noted the most is the amount of plant life you see in a specific area. It's estimated that approximately 900 metric tons of biomass, which is all plant matter you see around here, is to exist in approximately 1 hectare of rainforest, which is about 2.5 acres. And only 0.2% of the biomass is actually living animals, including arthropods to vertebrates. This is significantly less than the plant biomass you see around, but don't be discouraged by that particular fact, because there are still incredible relationships between the living animals and the plant biomass we see in this rainforest. There are, throughout the existence of the tropical rainforest, there has been all kinds of different relationships between animals and plants, or between living creatures and plants. Many of which are brief, many of which are long-term. And today we are going to explore briefly, to some extent, some of these interesting relationships, many of which have become very charismatic here in the tropics, and of course have made it to Discovery Channel documentaries, National Geographic, and others. Many people who travel in the tropics or who come to visit the tropics wish to see many of these incredible interactions among organisms and coevolutionary patterns that have made the tropics so unique and so exclusive to a certain extent. Well, let's begin. Before we saw termites and leaf cutters and others, and probably you have seen in documentaries of seeing these live yourselves, some of the things we are going to talk about. But let's move down here for a moment to get another perspective of the forest. And as one see in the woods, I will explain, as you're looking at the forest, some of the things that happen in this forest. Of course, we have a variety of ecosystems throughout the entire tropics, and in Costa Rica we have a variety of life zones and ecoregions within. Interactions, as we were saying, could be positive or negative or neutral or neutral for living creatures. One, for example, in a relationship in which both benefit from the interaction, we are going to call this kind of relationship a mutualistic relationship. So a mutualistic relationship is that relationship in which two organisms benefit each other. In evolutionary terms, for example, we can talk about insects and pollination. Bees, for example, evolved to pollinate certain kinds of plants. Orchid bees, for example, are very specific to certain kinds of orchids. This very interesting relationship, mutualistic relationship, benefits both organisms. We are going to also talk about commensalism. This particular relationship occurs when one species benefits from the interaction and the other one is not harmed at all or significantly compromised. Bromeliads, for example. I showed you a bromeliad just a little while ago. And here is one. If you look at this tree here, right over there, you will notice there's a tiny bromeliad, right? And it's attached to the trunk of the tree. This is a commensal relationship because the bromeliad is taking advantage of what's in the trunk of this tree, but is not harming the tree at all. This relationship, remember again, is called a commensalistic relationship. Another relationship is the parasitic relationship, and in this relationship, of course, we have a winner and we have a loser. For example, think about the relationship of predator and prey, and think about a wasp killing the eggs of frogs, preying the eggs of frogs. Or think about a jaguar killing a deer. Or think about a harpy eagle killing a monkey. Of course, the one that is going to benefit out of this relationship is definitely the predator. We also have the relationship of symbiotic relationships, or in which, of course, one organism depends on the other entirely to survive. And a pretty good example of this are leafcutter ants. Remember, leafcutters live in colonies, and we've been looking for leafcutters to show you, but we haven't found any because it's been very rainy. But occasionally you can see this trail of leafcutter ants transporting leaves in their mandibles to take inside the ground. As we said before, they use these leaves as a source of compost to nurture a fungi community that lives underground, which is their primary food. This fungi depends entirely on what the ant can do for it, and the ant depends entirely on the fungi because it won't be able to live without. This symbiotic relationship is duplicated dozens of times with many other kinds of rainforest creatures that happen to have the same kind of dynamic, the symbiotic relationship. These probably are the most commonly found type of relationships that have led to incredible coevolutionary patterns in the tropics, in which organisms depend on others to survive. Organisms have evolved to defend plants. For example, let's talk about cecropia trees. And if you find a cecropia tree and if you knock on the wood, you'll notice that the cecropia is hollow inside, and it hosts a community of ants called Azteca ants. Azteca ants, of course, will defend the tree because the tree has little chemical defenses, but in exchange it's been able to produce sweet substances like little tiny sweet glands on the edge of the leaves, which actually give the ants something to feed on. And jealously, the ants will protect the tree from any potential herbivore predator in order to defend their home and to defend the food source. So we have an interesting relationship right here in which the ants are defending the tree because it's something that they have interest on, and the tree is actually trying to attract the ants to defend itself from potential predators, having the ants completely to themselves. There are dozens of examples in the tropical rainforest of these kinds of relationships that make the rainforest an incredible and a very dynamic organism that is constantly evolving as we speak. Of course, these relationships may be more bizarre in other kinds of ecosystems. but in the tropical wet forests, we find some that are of extreme interest. For example, the leaf cutters that we were talking about. But if you want to see these things, definitely you have to visit the trop. You have to come to Costa Rica. You have to come and see us, and you have to wander with us in the forest so we can explore and look for these incredible co-evolutionary examples of how nature works in tropical rainforests. So we'll see you in the next video.